Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action.
Hi, y'all. This is Jerry Williams, a.k.a. TV Jerry. Come see the premieres of 31 short films that Richmond area creatives wrote, shot, and edited in 48 hours this past weekend for the Richmond 48-Hour Film Project. You've heard me talk about it on here several times. This takes place on Sunday, July 21st at 2 and 5 p.m. at Bowtie Movieland. Tickets are $12 in advance and $15 the day of the show. I'll include a link to the 48-Hour Film Project website on the webpage for the show at TV Jerry. Speaking of reminders, the theater readings that Alan Sater talked about in our podcast on July 3rd also take place this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, at Richmond Triangle Players.
In Pursuit of Flavor and Taste of Country Cooking, when those cookbooks were published, farm to table was not a phrase that we think of. But really what Miss Lewis did was really present seasonal cooking in a way that folks can understand from an American perspective. And she's really the first person to be able to articulate that into what we now know as farm to table.
That was Deb Freeman talking about Edna Lewis, who was an early proponent of the farm to table movement. Deb is an award-winning writer specializing in black foodways throughout America, but particularly in Virginia. She also hosts Setting the Table, a critically acclaimed podcast that explores black culinary history. Now she's working on a documentary about that famed influential black chef, Edna Lewis. It's starting out as a series of shorts and will evolve into a full-length documentary to be released in February.
Sifter Review of the Week.
Presumed Innocent on Apple TV+. This series should be renamed Presumed Guilty because it looks that way from the offset. Jake Gyllenhaal plays a prosecuting attorney whose partner is brutally murdered. Turns out he was having an affair with her, and even after 6 episodes, it looks like he did it. Meanwhile, he deals with his wife, Ruth Negga, and kids while working to build a case for his innocence. Since David E. Kelley has penned the series, you can expect lots of dramatic encounters, although the performances are sometimes one-dimensional or less than compelling. As a courtroom thriller, it has moments, and a promising ending, let's hope. Overall, Presumed Innocent lands squarely in the middle ground for the genre. This review is based on 6 out of 8 episodes, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Deb Freeman, welcome to Sifter for the Ear. You know, we have 2 things in common right off that I know of. One is you're the food editor for Style Weekly now, and I wrote for Style Weekly for 10 years doing movie reviews.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That was probably before you were born. It was back in the 80s, so it's been a while. And we're also fellow podcasters, and your podcast is called Setting the Table. What's that about?
Really, it's an argument laid out over 10 episodes about why African-American enslaved people really created the foundation of the most American cuisine there is.
Right.
Over those episodes, I talked to a myriad of scholars, a bunch of different chefs as well, to really explain where American food comes from and how it so deeply has its roots with, enslaved hands, but also with Virginia as well.
And it's funny because I know you've got lots of press and lots of recognition. And one of the things I love, it's so hilarious. Slow Food USA calls you a snail blazer. That's great.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. That's very smart.
So how did you get into food in the first place? Well, obviously we all eat food, but how did you become focused on food?
Probably about 6 years ago. Interestingly, I was in the Hampton History Museum in Hampton, Virginia, and I saw a photograph of African-American women. They were wearing these long aprons, long dresses, and standing at these tables, and they were picking crab. And I was so fascinated by this photograph because why were they picking crab? Where were they? Who were these people? And so I did a little research and found out that these women worked for a local seafood company in Hampton and ultimately were able to support their families by picking crab. And I wrote a story about that for Southern Grit magazine. And it was really a rabbit hole from that point forward, because I thought, if I did not know this, and this is in my backyard, I grew up in Norfolk, then what else am I missing? And so it was off to the races.
Well, I noticed you said Norfolk, and I know that somewhere in one of your interviews you said, yes, that's how you pronounce it, not Norfolk.
It is. If you say Norfolk, then
you know you're not from here. Yeah.
Exactly.
We don't drink, we don't smoke, Norfolk. Was that the first piece you wrote about food?
That was my very first food piece. Yeah.
And obviously you went on to do lots of articles, Condé Nast Traveler, and lots of other magazines. So how did you discover Edna Lewis?
I think that she was a figure that I had kind of heard of for a while, particularly once I started getting into food writing and food history. But I would say within the past couple of years is where I really started reading more about her work and her life. And Leah Branch, the executive chef over at the Roosevelt.
Footnote.
The Roosevelt is a restaurant that's been in Richmond's Churchill neighborhood since 2011, and it celebrates food of the South.
She and I put together a dinner on Edna Lewis, and each course represented a different time in her life. And so that's really where I was digging down into who Edna was, what she was cooking, and when. That's really where I started to think about her legacy and her deeper contributions to this country and to Southern food.
I watched that episode. That was the very first episode of your series?
It was. It
Oh,
was.
cool. Okay. When and why did you start the series? Did somebody approach you? Did VPM approach you? How did that happen?
Yeah, actually, I received an email. It was completely random. Received an email from Hannah and Lance over at Field Studio.
Right.
And they said, hey, we heard you on a podcast talking about Edna Lewis's life. Apparently on this podcast, I said that she needed to have a documentary. And they said, hey, we think that's pretty cool. Would you like to, sit down and talk about that? And I met with them at a taco place. We had tacos.
Such American food there. Good classic American food.
And really just hit it off immediately. And I said, yes, there was no hesitation that I wanted to help tell the story.
How is it playing out on VPM? How is the series playing out on VPM?
Yeah, so two different ways, actually. So each episode, and there are several of them leading up until February, once a month, a 7-minute episode will drop on VPM's YouTube channel. And then in February, there will be a broadcast television documentary, full-length documentary that will air on stations across the state. So it's really cool that people can see these kind of tidbits each month. And as I talk to different people and travel to New York and to Savannah and all these other places, and then really kind of put together this breadth of work that folks can find in that full-length documentary.
So it's actually getting, as it were, appetizers until the full course in February.
Touche.
Yeah. The entree, I guess I should say.
Yes.
This isn't your first experience on television. You were on this show on Max on Chasing Flavor with Carla Hall.
Footnote.
Chasing Flavor with Carla Paul is a series on Max where she traces the origin and history of America's favorite food. What was that like?
It was fun and intense. I mean, I think that, when you watch things on television, particularly food shows, it's presented to you in a neat package over the course of 30 minutes or 60 minutes.
Sure.
But really seeing how the sausage is made.
Food pun intended there.
Exactly. The 15, 20 minutes that the segment on Virginia barbecue really took 2 days to film.
Right.
And so just kind of, watching that process, everything from recreating a barbecue 2 days in a row, making it look like it was 1 day in a row or just 1 day. It was really fascinating. But I think the greatest pleasure really was working with Carla Hall and meeting her and just soaking up her energy. She's super, knowledgeable and enthusiastic. And watching her taste Virginia barbecue for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And seeing that enthusiasm and just her saying, why have I never heard of this? And so that was very deeply rewarding to be able to put Virginia on a national stage when it comes to food.
Cool. And hopefully maybe you can turn around and get Carla to be on your documentary.
Maybe.
That's a good idea. So I want to talk a little bit more about this documentary, and somebody is here to contribute.
Surprise guest drop-in.
Hi, Deb.
Footnote.
Hannah is Hannah Ayers. She's half of the team that, along with her partner Lance Warren, produced a documentary Picturing the Obamas about the tour of their national portraits. Okay, you were on the show last year talking about Picturing the Obamas. It's great to have you back. Now you're working with Deb Freeman. So how did that come about?
Yes, we were very lucky to be working with Deb, and thanks for having me back, Jerry. It's great to be here. I had started thinking about a new digital series that I wanted to do about the chef Edna Lewis. And I had already known Deb's work from her excellent podcast and had heard another interview with her when she talked about how her appreciation for Edna Lewis and said her life would be a brilliant movie. And I thought, yes, Deb, I agree. And I wonder if the two of us could work together on that. So my partner Lance and I reached out in January and asked if she would be interested in exploring this project and specifically coming on as both a host and executive producer. And she quickly agreed over tacos. And we've had such a fun adventure ever since.
Yeah, we had a little comment about tacos being such a classic American food before you got on, too.
Nice.
So let me ask you this, because I know that the shorts are coming out, the 7-minute interview versions are coming out once a month until this is released in February. How different is the documentary? Is it going to just be a compilation of all of these, or is it going to be more and better?
Well, I like to think it will be different, and I think it will be enhanced in some ways in that we'll be able to weave together some different themes, probably bring in scenes that we can't fit into the short web episodes. So I think even if you follow along each month, and I hope people will, to watch the individual episodes, you'll definitely see new material and be introduced, I think, to new ideas through the feature-length film.
And also, I mentioned her before you got on, too, that maybe you should get Carla Hall to be on her show.
She's wonderful. Yeah, I would love that. There's so many amazing people, and we've been lucky to connect with many of them, but it's hard to decide who to interview because Edna means so much to so many people.
So what has the process been like for y'all at this point?
It's been wonderful. It's been, I would say, an adventure. And, we picked the title Finding Edna Lewis very intentionally because it really does feel like a journey of discovery. There's very little archival material, as Deb may have mentioned. And so we really do feel
That's always a
like
challenge.
Yeah. So we really do feel like we're tracking down, the bits of evidence that there are, and crucially, the people who knew her, the people who have been influenced by her, people who've really studied her books and have, really tried to keep her legacy alive. So we've been lucky that many people that we've approached to be kind of our dream cast have said yes, and we've had a chance to film in New York City, and we have plans to go a few other places. And so it's been a lot of fun. And I know I've learned a lot, and it's been such a pleasure to work with Deb.
And hopefully you've had some good meals along the way.
We sure have.
Great. So Deb, how would you say that Hannah and Lance have contributed to make this thing even better than what you envisioned?
Oh my gosh, in innumerable ways. I mean, both of them are such a pleasure to work with. It's so easy to work with, and open to my ideas, even if they're silly. So I'm deeply appreciative of that. But really, just they provide a background and a strength in film that I simply do not have. I'm someone who, can write very well and talk a lot. But, really they've been able to structure things and thematically kind of pace things in a way that I did not have an experience in. And so it's really been wonderful for me to learn from them and kind of see what's going on and how they're producing this project. And so I'm super thankful that they're my first foray into kind of doing this sort of work.
Walk me through the timeline, because I know one episode's already up. So are you shooting each of those just intermittently over a month, or are you shooting them all at once and then releasing them over a month?
So the first episode will be out July 19th, and they'll come out one per month. We are filming intermittently between February and probably October or November. One thing that's really exciting about this is it feels like we are producing this at a time when there's been this surge in interest in Edna Lewis, so we've really been able to build on that. So the reason why we filmed in February was because Deb and Chef Leah Branch at the Roosevelt had already been planning this dinner honoring Edna Lewis, so we were able to jump on that as our first shoot. And then in April, we learned that Orange County was going to unveil a highway marker honoring Miss Lewis.
Oh, cool.
And so we were able to capture that, and it also meant that Miss Lewis's niece, Nina, was in town from Colorado, and so we got a chance to film with her. So it's been this really nice coming together of a lot of different initiatives and momentum, and so we've been able to build on that.
And obviously, compared to Picturing the Obamas, where you had a whole lot of footage, you had a lot more struggles with this one.
We've been able to really lean into the beautiful visuals of the places that we're going to and the fact that it is centered on cooking, which I think is a really beautiful visual to capture. So going to Orange County was really special because we got to film the very land where Miss Lewis grew up. And we're actually going back in August to attend her church revival and to meet more of her family friends. And so there's a lot there to try to honor the place that was so important to her and also the food that she pioneered.
Right. So are you going to have a lot of food, obviously? And did you get a special food stylist to shoot that, or are you just you and Lance just gonna make it work?
We're relying on, and it's working out very well, the cooks and the chefs and the special guests that we have on the show. A lot of them are experts, and so they know how to plate really beautifully. And also, there's one special thing about Miss Lewis's cooking is the simplicity. And so it doesn't have to be some gussied up thing. It's, it could be a beautiful piece of cake with blackberries on top, and it's gorgeous. There's elegance in that simplicity.
I appreciate you jumping on, Hannah. I know it's been hectic filming and here, there, and everywhere. So thanks for making time to do this, and just really just thank you for allowing me to be on this journey with you. Really, it's a wonderful, wonderful time.
Well, thank you, Deb. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I feel so lucky. And, you never know what it's going to be like to really work with someone until you dive in. And I can say with pure heart that it's been just such a blast. And you come in with so many great ideas, and I love listening to the conversations that you have with our guests. I love the stories that you bring from your childhood, from your grandmother, thinking back to the wonderful dishes that she made for you that adds so much to the series. So I feel very lucky to have this opportunity.
Well, Hannah, it's great to see you again.
Yes, great to see you, Jerry.
Say hello to Lance for us, and we'll definitely re-air this when the show drops in February.
Okay, wonderful. I appreciate it, Jerry. All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you. Deb, can you give us one example of one of those great stories?
My grandmother really was just such an excellent cook. And so growing up every day, I would come home and not exactly know what was going to be for dinner. And she would surprise me with things that were just made from scratch pretty much every day. So, things as simple as meatloaf or, pasta, spaghetti meatballs was a big hit, but she was making, collard greens, and she would make, chicken dumplings, which she called chicken pastry, cornbread, like all of these dishes. And so it wasn't until I was grown and had a child of my own that I realized she was taking a significant amount out of her day to make sure that these things were ready for me by the time I got home at 3:30 or whatever time it was. And just that expression of love just really stays with me. And I didn't think of it then, because when I was a kid, I was just like, oh, what's it going to be today? Know? But now I realize what that was, and that's really special.
Speaking of special, let's go back and talk about Edna Lewis a little bit. So what is the concept of the documentary? Have you got kind of an objective or a theme, or is it just a bio, or what?
Yeah, I think that the title encapsulates it really well with Finding Edna Lewis. I think that throughout the series, and you'll see each month and even in the documentary, that I really am trying to find and discover who Edna Lewis was and what she meant to people. And it really has been a journey of discovery. And it's funny when I ask the question to folks I interview, it comes out, it's never, when did you first learn about it? And it's always, when did you discover her? Because I feel like she's kind of omnipresent in the background, just waiting for you to discover her, which is really a gift. And so really it is just all about discovery and exploring not only what she meant to Virginia food and Southern food, but also to American food, and why she's so important. I mean, she really is the first American woman chef who's working back of house in the 1950s. I mean, people always think about Julia Child as kind of the marquee chef of the time. And I absolutely adore Julia Child, but she was not working in restaurants. She was working, on television. She was cooking this food. She was eating the food when she was abroad. But Edna Lewis really was back of the house, executive chef of major restaurants. And that is something that I don't think a lot of people are talking about enough. And so just little tidbits like that I hope will make people go, oh, and want to learn a little bit more.
Right. Now, I did get to see the first episode, which will be out in just a couple of days, which was at a dinner, like Hannah mentioned, to honor Edna at the Roosevelt with Leah Branch. Now, I want to ask you, because one thing that was mentioned in that I thought was interesting is that she was really the originator of the farm to table movement.
Yeah. And I think we kind of take farm to table for granted now, because
Right.
it's been said so many times, In Pursuit of Flavor and Taste of Country Cooking. When those cookbooks were published, farm to table was not a phrase that we think of.
Right.
But really, what Miss Lewis did was really present seasonal cooking in a way that folks can understand from an American perspective. And she's really the first person to be able to articulate that into what we now know as farm to table.
So they did have this dinner. How did you help put it together? Or was this all Leah's idea?
It's so funny. Leah and I had done a dinner for Juneteenth, celebrating African-American Virginia culinary figures. And so when she said, hey, I want to do another dinner, and she was like, I've been thinking about Edna Lewis. I'm like, no, that is awesome. And so really she and I kind of talked about what dishes made sense to coordinate with what time in her life. So one course was about Freetown. One course was about her time in New York, her time in South Carolina, and that sort of thing. So really just kind of thinking about what made sense. And at that point, then it was, Leah was off to the races, and she was able to beautifully execute all of these dishes that Edna had kind of laid out for everyone. And so my role is really to lead the diner over the course of the night, why this dish is symbolic, why this dish is important, why it was chosen. I'm the historical side of it,
right,
and the actual presentation, technical side of it.
Yeah, well, and you see that cooking in the kitchen, pan-fried quail with country ham.
It was delicious.
Was it? So what was your favorite dish?
That's really hard to say, but I think either the quail or there was also a dish that was really good that was just a play on barbecue. And obviously, I'm always going to talk about barbecue
Right.
every chance I get. But I think those two probably were just kind of the standouts for me.
Right. Do you expect every episode to have a meal prepared in it?
Not every episode, but more often than not, because I do want to highlight these recipes and get people hungry too.
And you're going to make the menus available or the recipes available online?
We can absolutely make recipes available online too, yeah.
Okay, great. It's a good idea. So you mentioned they'll be different. How will the episodes be different? If they're not cooking a meal, what else would be involved?
Yeah, so some of the episodes are just conversations with folks. And so, it's very visual, so I don't want it to sound like it's just a straight kind of interview.
Talking heads, right.
Although there is a bit of that. But I think that we're going to places that are important and resonate with her life. And so we're able to kind of deep dive a little bit more with people as far as what these places mean, what a recipe means to them, what Miss Lewis meant to them. So we're able to really encapsulate that without necessarily going into the kitchen. But it's hard to talk about her and not go into the kitchen. That's
right.
hard.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So more often than not, we are making a dish though.
Now, let me ask you about one episode. This is totally different, but it's for me. You have an episode of, I guess it was your podcast or maybe an article, Vegan is the New Black.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been a vegetarian since the 70s, so I'm not quite a vegan yet. So what was that article about? Why did you pay tribute to me?
That was such a great article, Vegan is the New Black, for Plate Magazine. Essentially about the rise of Black veganism. That was really cool because I got to write about the historic legacy of it, that, this is not flash in the pan, this is not a trend, but largely a lot of the diet of African Americans in the early 20th century and the 19th century was largely vegetarian. Meat was eaten, either to flavor food or, on different occasions, but it was not an everyday occasion. That would have been a huge luxury to have meat every single day. So it's natural that if you didn't necessarily grow up with meat, that's not something that you craved or expected to have. It's not a new phenomenon. It's something that historically resonates in the Black community and also from a belief system. For example, there are some Muslims in the Black community that do not eat not just pork, but any kind of meat as well. And so really we're talking about that as well. So that was a really cool article to research and really bring to life.
I guess with your love of barbecue, you'll never consider being a vegetarian.
No, I can't do it. Can't do it.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I've tried to be a vegan 3 times, and I couldn't get past. I have to have dairy. I got to have cheese, got to have ice cream. So I just never got there. So I know you do the podcast, obviously, but this show is not. This is actually video with pictures and food and all that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely, which is a departure for me because I think a lot of folks know me from the podcast.
Right.
That's what I think is another thing that's so exciting about this project is that I get to be visual as well as auditory, and folks can really see the images that I'm talking about and not just imagine it. So I'm thrilled that this will be aired on television. I'm super excited about it.
Let me just clarify that too, because you mentioned it's going to be on VPM's YouTube channel.
Right.
Is it going to be on the air at some point too, on their actual broadcast?
It is. So each month, the monthly kind of episodes that we've been talking about, those 7-minute episodes will reside on YouTube, but the full-length documentary will air on televisions around the state in February.
Oh, great. So we have some time for that. So the last question I always like to ask everybody is when you're not finding a great recipe, what do you like to watch on TV?
Ooh, I love Law and Order SVU.
Oh, really? That old classic. Okay.
That is one of my favorite shows. I'm a big fan of Olivia Benson.
Okay. And I have to ask you, what about The Bear?
Of course I'm watching The Bear. Like, I think like my food research card would be pulled if I was not watching The Bear. I am in the deep throes of season 3 right now. And so it's really a top tier show. I really enjoy it.
I'm glad it's funny because last week's show, I asked her about it and she loved The Bear. I'm one of those few that's like, it's just a bunch of angry people yelling at each other the whole time. But apparently a lot of people are loving it. So I'm glad you like that. Well, Deb, this has been great, very entertaining. I look forward to seeing the finished documentary and watching the different episodes. So thanks very much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Deb Freeman is an award-winning writer, specializing in black foodways throughout America, but particularly in Virginia. She also hosts Setting the Table, a critically acclaimed podcast that explores black culinary history. She's now working on this documentary about the famed influential black chef Edna Lewis. It'll start as a series of shorts on VPM's website and will evolve into a full-length documentary to be released in February. I'll include a link to the first episode and more on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
Coming soon. In theaters.
Twisters. This update on the original Tornado thriller stars Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones. The Vortilac. This French import follows a marquis who ends up in a strange forest. Oh yes, the title is a sort of Russian vampire. Oddity. Yet another ghost thriller with a creepy wooden mannequin. Disciples in the Moonlight, a faith-based film set in a future when Bibles are outlawed. National Anthem. Charlie Plummer stars as a construction worker in New Mexico who joins a community of queer rodeo performers. Mother Couch. Ellen Burstyn plays a stubborn mother who refuses to leave a couch in a furniture store. Ewan McGregor plays one of the sons.
TV and streaming.
Lady in the Lake on Apple. Natalie Portman stars as a woman who leaves her domestic life in the 60s to pursue a career as a journalist and becomes involved in a mysterious case. Skywalkers, a love story on Netflix, a documentary about a couple of rooftopers who climb skyscrapers and perform acrobatic stunts. Time Bandits on Apple. Taika Waititi reboots the 1981 fantasy film from Monty Python guys Terry Gilliam and Michael Palin. Dress My Tour on Hulu, a new reality series that has 11 aspiring designers creating fashions for famed musicians like Paula Abdul, Toni Braxton, and more. Snowpiercer on AMC. This is the final season of the series about a train that traverses the frozen world. Cobra Kai on Netflix, the 6th and final season of this Karate Kid spinoff. Next week, we'll take a road trip to meet the Emmy-winning creator of The Life of a Musician, a concert interview series produced by the newish Appalachian PBS. This is Jerry Williams. Thanks for listening.
For more Sifter, including literally thousands of reviews,
visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.